Hello, everyone. My name is Don Hahn, and I'm your moderator for a discussion I've been looking forward to for a long, long time about the making of Over the Moon from Netflix with the makers of Over the Moon from Netflix. And I love this movie, and so it's a real pleasure, honor, and I can't wait to get into this. So let me introduce you to our panel today, and then we'll dive into some questions, get some background on this amazing movie, which I loved a lot, and talk about its origins and where it came from, what the inspirations were, and give you some insights into just the kind of brilliant look and feeling of this movie. First, let me introduce Gennie Rim, and Gennie's one of the producers on the film, has a long history in animation with Pixar and Disney, and worked with Glen Keane previously on his Oscar-winning short Dear Basketball with Kobe Bryant. And Gennie, welcome to our podcast here.
Thank you.
Peilin Chou, I have known for a long, long time, going back to days at Disney. And Peilin's the kind of, the incredible kind of creative, chief creative officer at Pearl Studio, and responsible in many ways for the genesis of this and the genesis of a lot of great work coming out of Pearl. Peilin, welcome to you. Celine Desrumaux is the production designer on the film. And Celine, I have never met you before, but boy, I love your work. And I love a lot of movies that you've worked on, especially Little Prince, which I thought was just a knockout. And it's so nice to meet you and have you as part of this discussion today. So welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, my friend Glen Keane, who I have known for many years. And Glen probably doesn't need an introduction, but he's had a storied career at Disney and many other places, animating, designing, bringing stories like this to life for his whole career, and winning an Oscar for his most recent short, Dear Basketball, with Kobe Bryant. So Glen, welcome to you and to all of you for being part of this today. I can't wait to kind of see what's on your mind and how you pulled this all together. I love this film. I thought it took on a very bold subject in terms of its storytelling and the emotion of it all, which surprised me because it's also really funny, which also surprised me. So Gennie and Peilin, maybe you can dive in and tell us a little bit about kind of the genesis of the project, where it came from, kind of what your earliest ideas were on this film and how it all started.
Sure. So Over the Moon was born at Pearl Studio. And it was originally pitched by Janet Yang, who's one of our executive producers. She came to a brain trust at Pearl in December 2015, which was an annual event we held at Pearl once a year, where we would invite thought leaders and creatives from around the world to talk about what's the best Pearl could be, and also to explore possible new project ideas. So she came and shared the idea of, what if we did a modern day telling of the Chang'e tale? The Chang'e myth of the moon goddess is super famous in China. We often refer like more well known than Santa Claus in China. And the idea she had was, could we do a telling of the tale, but seen through the eyes of a little girl named Fei Fei, who was trying to build a rocket to get to the moon to prove that the moon goddess exists. So that was kind of the very beginnings of the project, which quickly went into development at Pearl. And then we hired Audrey Wells to come on board to work with us on realizing an outline and later a script.
And Gennie, how did you get involved in this? And is it true, Peilin, that you ambushed Glen at the Annecy Festival?
Glen was sending me a secret message, so I was just merely adhering to his request. Glen and I actually had not been in Annecy for 20 years. Independently, neither of us had gone, and 2017 was the first time we had both come to Annecy. And Glen was giving a talk, and I was so excited to see he was going to be there and really wanted to attend. And of course, it was completely sold out. And I stalked Gennie and begged her to get a ticket in at the last moment, and was so grateful that I was able to do so, because when Glen was giving his talk and just talking about what he loves about animation and what kind of characters and stories appeal to him, all I heard was, I want to direct Over the Moon, because everything he was saying was describing this movie. So it was a pretty amazing moment.
Yeah, it's funny how those kind of gifts fall into your lap once in a while. And Gennie, you got involved in the movie about the same time, I take it.
Yeah, I think at that moment where I was like, Peilin, meet me on the steps of the bungalow for like between this like 10-minute period. That was kind of the start of this wonderful journey, which led to her asking us to take a look at the script, and she pitched us the film, and I think 20 pages in was in tears, just sobbing. The characters, the story, all of it just so resonated with me very deeply. I mean, the characters, a 12-year-old Chinese girl living in modern day China who believes in these fairy tales, and she does it with her own intelligence and determination. I was just so floored by this kind of story and this character. And I told Glen, like, everything in my life, I feel like led me to this moment. There's so much similarities in the blended family. I have a blended family. I have a stepfather, but now I'm also married with stepkids, and knowing all the dynamics of what that means of bringing somebody new into your life. And then also the fact that Fei Fei's family has this bakery that they live in. Every morning they wake up and they open the bakery, and every night they close the bakery, and it's just this rhythm of their life. And I was so familiar with that growing up in restaurants. From the time I could walk, I was bussing tables, so I just knew that feeling of what a family life could be in that rhythm. And also when tragedy strikes, you still wake up and you open the restaurant, and what that means to move on from painful moments, and then to have a new family come into your life through those moments. It was such, and the way that Audrey wrote it, there was such a richness to and a realness to all of it, that it so felt like she was telling something so personal, and I felt that, and I shared that with Glen, and Glen shared that he equally felt that way about Fei Fei, and the determination that she has in her character. And I don't know, Glen, if you want to talk a little bit about that moment when we were talking about, should we do this? And I think it was a full, we're in it together, let's do this.
Yeah, Glen, I'd love to hear your side of the story, and how what attracted you to the script, and what you knew about this myth beforehand, and kind of your beginnings on this. And Celine, please join in too.
Well, for me, the talk I was giving that Peilin responded to was one thing, you don't know you're auditioning for the part. You're just sharing what you love about animation, which is a great way to go for a job audition anyway. And I just talked about thinking like a child is being the key to animation. And as Gennie and I were talking about the script, I felt like Fei Fei was everything that I love in animated characters. For me, it's always that character that's the doorway to whether I believe in the story or not. And I just really connected with Fei Fei. This idea that a 12-year-old girl could build a rocket to the moon, and that she believes that a goddess lives there, and that she's got such a real problem and a drive to get there to actually make this a reality. All of that was like, I love this girl. I really want to bring her to life, as if whether I was animating it or directing it, I wanted to see her as real to me as I was feeling it was in those pages. And I remember reading the script at the point where Fei Fei is going to build this rocket, and the fantasy of that. And I thought, I've lived this. Like and I remember when I was 7 years old, my dad, for my birthday, I had all my friends over there at our house, and my dad walks in and he says, All right, everybody, I've got a surprise for everyone. And like, what? Yeah, I have a friend of mine from NASA. They've created this new rocket ship, and it's in the backyard, but it's top secret. Would you like to go for a ride on it? We're like, yes, yes. He said, but you know, we're starting to run out the door, and he says, it's top secret, so you can't see it. It means I'm going to have to blindfold every one of you one by one, and we'll go on a ride, and we'll come back. It'll be a quick ride. So one by one, we went out there, and as you're walking out, you got the blindfold, and you can hear ground control, and you climb up onto the little rocket ship, and you are strapped in. And Dad says, you know, so we're not going up into the stratosphere. We're staying down. It'll be an open cockpit, a little bit of a ride. We'll go around really quick. Might pass by Saguaro Lake. This was out in Arizona, and you hear the countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the rocket starts going up, and you're going in the air, and you can feel the wind blowing in your face, and then you can feel yourself going down past that Saguaro Lake, and the water splashes up, and finally you come back, and as you land, the seatbelt is taken off, and you're stepping down off the rocket ship, and the blindfold is removed, and it's my mom and dad on either side of the chair with a fan. They're blowing for the wind, and there's a swimming pool, and the shortwave radio for the sounds. And what was so cool, Don, at that moment was you would have thought you'd been disappointed, but it was even better because I realized it all took place in my head, in my imagination. And this movie that we were all going to do, we were going to take the audience who was going to sit there, and basically we're blindfolding them and making them believe this incredible journey that we were going to take them on. It's just like, I got to do this movie.
Yeah, that's funny how autobiographical it is in a funny way. The thing that struck me too is that maybe the first 20 minutes of the movie is very grounded in family and reality and earth and food, which I loved. And then it goes into this spectacular fantasy. And I just think from an art direction standpoint and world building standpoint, did you do what research did you do to kind of understand the culture, the architecture, the world of China? But then how on earth did you come up with this kind of Alice in Wonderland world that she goes to on the far side of the moon? And Celine, maybe that's a question for you, because it's, what kind of background, how do you start with a blank piece of paper on an assignment like that?
You start by taking 20 coffees a day and balancing on your chair, asking yourself, how will I do it?
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's funny because I'm reacting to when Glen said that she wasn't auditioning for the movie, and it's kind of how it happened for me as well. Because I was working with Gennie on a previous project I've just said, and she was like, I received a text one day, and she was saying, I'm about to board a plane. I'm going to Montreal for 48 hours. Do you want to grab a coffee? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And she arrived in Montreal, and she showed up with Glen completely unannounced. And it's how I met Glen. And I never asked them, oh, why are you in Montreal? I was like, just, oh, it's a coffee with Gennie and Glen, and let's sit and discuss. And so we did that. And the next day, I met Peilin. And I was announcing to Gennie, oh, by the way, I'm taking like 2 months holiday in Asia, and I'm going to travel 1 month in China. And she was, wait, you're taking vacation? And the second thing was like, hey, we'll be in China too. So I was going for 1 month in China when Pearl invited the leadership of the movie to come for a research trip, to spend 1 week in Shanghai in order to visit Shanghai, but also the water town. And quickly after this meeting, I started to work freelance on the project, and then I became production designer. And 2 months later, I went to China, and they went on this research trip. And in the middle of March, I believe, we all meet up in Shanghai for a research trip. And I think for me, it was like really inspiring, because when you start to work on a project that is like not your country, that is not your city, the first thing that you're doing is like Googling. So you're going on Google and you're typing, I don't know, water town in China, and you see beautiful images and amazing close-up of foods, but it's like nothing like when you're going on site and you are like smelling and you see how the sunset is tinting the atmosphere and how people are living, how they're walking, how they've got always food or plastic bags in their hands. And I think for me, the production design really started at that moment. Glen draw me, I don't know, many sketches. I don't know how many pages you draw, Glen. And on my side, I was like taking a bunch of pictures from my personal trip, but also like a lot of references of Fusen and Nangshan, the two cities that we visited. Food was amazing. We even like eat at one of the artist place, and there was our grandparents, our parents, and our little kid, and it was like really amazing. I don't know, Glenn, what was your experience of this resort trip?
It's really interesting just seeing this one image here of the circle table. Is such a symbol of what we were all learning about China, about how important the circle of a family is. By the way, that was the name of my dad's cartoon, The Family Circle, and they changed it to Family Circus. So that's a plug for him. But this was a dinner we had at one of the artists, Elle's house. And it was so wonderful just to be included in their family and seeing there's a little, it's hard to see in that picture, but there's a Lazy Susan where the food would turn around. And I'd always just kind of equated that. I just took it for granted. Like, oh, Chinese food, you always got food shared that way. But what it was really about was how deeply connected family is, not just this generation, but connected deep generationally for thousands of years. The roots grow so deep. In America, they're very shallow compared. And these were things I was just sort of marinating in as we were there in that town. And Celine, working with her, walking alongside another artist like her, was really wonderful because she was seeing things through her eyes, which is really about color and light and authenticity. It was never about what is a stereotypical view of China. It was what's real. I mean, she'd just been walking around all over this gigantic country and seeing everything. And it was those little things that she was picking up. And I was learning a lot from her. I mean, I was practicing what I call reverse mentorship, where you're learning from people that are younger and smarter and better than you in so many ways. And that was the beginning of this journey with her.
It's interesting because another thing that surprised me of the many things about this film was really how universal it was. I felt that themes like family, themes like food, and loss, and stepmothers and cobbled together families are universal. And that surprised me because I thought that was put across really well. And I think a lot of that has to do maybe with your screenwriter, Audrey Wells. And this is a question for all of you. Maybe Peilin, you can lead this off, but Audrey came in early and really helped establish this idea of adapting this kind of myth, but gave it what I thought was a really accessible take. What was she like?
So amazing to work with Audrey. I've been a fan of hers her whole career and hoped one day I would get an opportunity to work with her. And really, the so many strong female characters that she created, and which she imbued Fei with as well. Fei's whole backstory, her whole family situation, why she wanted to go to the moon, why it was so urgent she meet this moon goddess. All of that was Audrey's creation and invention. and also particularly the parallel journey of grief that Feifei and Tonga go on together and are able to heal each other. That was something very integral and important to the type of story she was trying to tell. And also the interpretation of Tonga kind of as a diva, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry-esque goddess. That's never been seen before in China. And that was Audrey's invention as well. So much of the spirit of these characters came from her, and for her it was a really, really personal story. When she turned in the script, she told me it was the most important script she had ever written. So it was something that really came from her heart and soul in so many ways.
Well, and for you all, a bittersweet experience because sadly she passed away during the making of the movie. And I thought there's a fearlessness to the way you all dealt with grief in the movie. It's a topic that's not often approached in any movie in a positive way. But you approached it visually. You approached it with music and song, and in a time when we're, as a culture, dealing with a lot of those issues. I thought it was actually inspiring. How frightening was it to deal with that topic? And maybe Glen, this comes back to you. Full on, you're dealing with the loss of a mother in this case, and you want to face that. You want to give the audience an appreciation for what that means. Did that frighten you? How did you approach that? It's difficult.
When you read the script, immediately you know that this is not a writer writing for just to entertain, to tell a story.
Right.
That there was something deeply personal, and it came out in surprising ways, very poetic ways, the kind of ways that hit you and move you. Like you get to the page on the script where Changa goes into the chamber, and the words are the chamber of exquisite sadness.
Yeah.
After Hoyi has reappeared and he's gone again. And you cannot read those words without stopping and just being hit. What is she saying? The chamber of exquisite sadness. It's as if she didn't write anything after that, you knew what she was going to go through, and that the importance of embracing the very thing that you fear and its exquisite sadness, because on the other side is a joy and a peace and a whole new celebration of life. And in reading that, it was like, I may not know exactly how to do it, but I know how it has to feel.
Yeah.
It has to be something that you experience personally. And for Celine, what was on her plate was now visualize that. You've got this incredible, great concept, but how the heck are you going to show it? And it was one of the most stunningly beautiful moments in the movie, is stepping into the chamber.
It really is, and it's almost choreographed the way it's visualized. And the other thing that strikes me is to balance that, how funny the movie is. I mean, that who's the character that shows up and is her kind of comic relief at a certain point is so damn funny. I was really surprised and happy for that. I just felt like this is a really wonderful, joyful counterpoint to some of the more profound lessons the movie teaches. So there's a lot of range in the movie. And I think, Celine, this is a question for you. How do you approach that? Your designs that sometimes are poetic, at sometimes it's hand-drawn animation to illustrate the original fairy tale. At times it is a carnival and just full of kind of a theme park feeling to it. How do you orchestrate that? How do you do a color script for that? How do you, reserve your choices so that it spreads out over the length of the movie?
It's very difficult. I think I'm always trying to see what is a climax of each film. So, for example, what is the saddest moment? What is a like action moment, what is a poetic moment, what is the most colorful moment. And I'm making like little notes. And then there was this difference between the Earth and Lunaria. And Lunaria itself was like a huge challenge because there's this moon goddess who is on the dark side of the moon. And just by saying that, dark side of the moon, there's like tons of images that is in the mind because it's a mysterious place, it's unknown, and it's very dark. And the first idea that you have is like, oh, she's a moon goddess, she lost her true love, and she's in a desert, and it's dark. So the first thing that you might think, it's like, oh, it must be depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the movie and the script is like playing the other way. And I think that in terms of design, we also try that, and we develop this concept that everything is born from the tears of Chang'e, like a god is creating his own kind. So there's this kind of relationship with the Lunarians that they are tears, but they are colorful and they are joyful. So she's like, they're coming from her sadness, but at the same time, they are not representing sadness. So I think I really like this relationship through the movie between what is like positive and what is sad, and never dipping too much into the sadness. And even the chamber of sadness itself, yes, it's sadness, but it's not nothing. Black is
Right.
nothing. And I think that from the beginning, we never envisioned like our sadness to be like completely black, because a big darkness is happening outside in Lunaria when everything is losing light. But inside the chamber, it's like filled with this nostalgia and memories that are showing up sometimes. And there's like an atmosphere and there's particles. We in production, we even gave a name for this color. We when it was showing in lighting, we said like, oh, that's the color of the exquisite sadness.
Mm-hmm.
So you're defining the sequence and those moments that needs to be like very subtle, and you're pinning that on a bigger chart, and you're building that. And I think for me, it was also very important to have like a bigger difference than, oh, it's black and white and it's sad on Earth, and then she's going to the moon, it's like full of color. So we made a point of having the water turn on Earth very colorful and very enjoyable as well.
Yes.
Because it's like not depressing to live in this city. It's actually like amazing, and everybody's wearing colors, and there's canola fields that are just like yellow from until the horizon. So it was, I think it was much more elevated to build this difference between Earth and the moon. And there was also this concept that when you are on Earth, everything is reflecting the light, and the objects are getting their color because they're reflecting the light. But because we are going to the dark side of the moon, by definition, it's dark. And one of the references that Glen brought from early on was CD cover of Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, which is showing like a black background with like the prism that is dividing the light into colors. So we needed to find a way to embrace the black sky, but also have like something that is justifying the source of light.
Mm-hmm.
So if everything is reflecting like on Earth, everything is emitting light on the moon. So we could kind of stay physically correct with the black sky, but still have those characters emitting light and being the guide of Feifei. So when Feifei is alone with Gobi on the moon trying to get back to Lunaria, Gobi is like the only source of light of Feifei, and from a visual standpoint, but also from meaningful standpoint, is literally the only person who can bring Feifei back to Lunaria. So I think that visual, we try to not match the story, but try to elevate it and support it the best we could. And when you have Glen Keane as a director, you know that the animation will be like amazing. So you get the pressure and the challenge to think like, oh, I need to be as good as Glen in the other department.
It works the other way too. It really works the other way too.
Well, it does. I think one thing, having worked with Glen, one thing I know about him is he is a team player. It's not a solo act. It's not an ego thing. It's really about how can we get the best out of everybody. And I loved what you were talking about, because it's like on the far side of the moon, you have this, all the characters are emitting light, which I thought was a great metaphor for this kind of almost spiritual sense of characters, that they have this light within them. And maybe I was reading too much into it, but I just thought that that contrast to Watertown was really wonderful. And Watertown is based on a real place. Is that true?
Yes, there's like I don't know how many Watertown berries there are around Shanghai, but we visited two, Wuzhen and Nangchun, and they are similar but very different. I'm sure Peilin can can talk about that. You must have visited them like many times.
Peilin, what's your...
We visited two water towns that are about a couple hours from Shanghai, and I think even in the script phase, we had thought of Wuzhen as an inspiration for where Feifei could be from. But it's often thought of as like the Venice of China for Westerners in terms of that kind of setting within China.
So beautiful. I want to divert for a second and talk to Gennie and Peilin as well, because I'm a producer and a creative producer, as you guys are. And I was once again amazed at the variety of talent that you all, with Glen, pulled together on this movie. The studio itself in China, which makes sense. You had people all over the planet working on this movie, and in the middle of a pandemic. So maybe, Gennie, you can touch on that, and Peilin, just the ambition of the movie blew me away. The amount of visual storytelling. How do you do that and just seem to break a lot of molds in terms of how you do that?
It was super easy.
You're lying.
Yeah, I think we from day one reading the script, and what Audrey wrote was like very ambitious, and I think it was her first script for animation, and it was a little bit like, okay, the character count is quite high. It was massive, and it was just showed that she just was like, I'm going for it all, like I want to really build something so wild and unseen before, and we were signed up for that, and I think we were luckily Peilin was out the gate, was like, go for it, let's make the impossible happen. I think Glen, you had an appetite to say like, okay, yeah, let's really figure this out. Celine, the team itself was very signed up to do the very best. And then it's also a Glen Keane debut, first directing a feature. It's like, okay, the quality is already, the bar is set so high in what we needed to achieve. And we kind of just held to that bar the whole way through. And every, crew member who came on, they just knew what we were going to do. And as we were looking for our partners, Sony Pictures Imageworks in Vancouver, they were also very much like, okay, like everybody, it's going to be a marathon. Let's like really think through all of this. But never once did we ever feel like our crew felt like it was too much. They were very much signed up for what they felt was a very special film. And so when we get to the pandemic and we have 5 weeks left in animation, I think that that sentiment of like, we already knew we were doing something really special without a pandemic, that going into the pandemic, it was something that everybody, every single person, whether it was the IT person who was helping getting everybody set up, within a week's time, I think we had our whole crew of 200 people up on work from home kits immediately. Wow. It was just amazing how dedicated everybody was to getting us across that finish line, and doing it with the utmost care and thought of, let's maintain this level of quality all the way through. I mean, most of our lighting was done at home. And I think about our crew and how every single one of us was waking up every morning in a world of uncertainty, and we would log in, we would go to our Google reviews and it'd be like, just a huge number of little dots signing up for these lighting reviews. And each one of them brought so much to it. And I think it was a bonding experience because we were all going through a global uncertainty, and the certain thing was, we're going to go and we're going to keep working on this film. We're going to deliver this film. We're going to figure it out together. And I will always be so grateful for every single crew member because of that. And doing it with families at home, kids who are, I think all of us were very much struggling with just the personal side of the pandemic, but also the professional side.
It's astounding because none of that hardship shows up on the screen in a negative way. You would never know. It just feels like this buoyant movie that's happening in front of your eyes.
Hey, Don, I just wanted to say one thing there that, I mean, especially since there's 3 producers here who I've gotten to work with, and how important looking into the eyes of a producer is, and especially when everything gets crazy, and you feel like this isn't going to work. I mean, it's just, I mean, I know Celine, you felt that, I felt that. I mean, there's these panic moments. And I remember with you, Don, on Beauty and the Beast, no time left, and me just so anxious. How am I going to animate the transformation? And you just said, "Don't worry about it. I got it." And you walked out of my office, and somehow, even though we had no time left in the film, you made me feel like I had time. That happened again and again with Gennie, with Peilin. I never got the message from them that the world was on fire. It was always a confidence. So important that you have people around you that remind you that you're going to actually get this done. And that, I never felt that as strongly as in that pandemic time, that you're looking and everybody's faces are kind of big on your computer, and you really can look into each other's eyes.
Yeah,
that's what I was seeing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know that about Gennie and Peilin in terms of, I think a good producer is a servant of the artists more than anything. And I know you guys do that just by virtue of being able to finish this movie at the level of quality you did. And one of the things that got me too, in spite of Glen's horrible Wi-Fi and internet service, is the acting and the character designs. The foundation of character design in this movie, which Glen is something you do extraordinarily well, is so appealing. How did you approach that, Glen? Because I feel like if that foundation weren't there, the movie wouldn't work as well. And every character in a different way, in a different shape, language, and everything else has an appeal that is really unique. How do you approach that?
Well, thanks for saying that, Don. It was really, really important for me that Fei be authentic. She's a real Chinese girl so designing her face was fortunate. I'm surrounded with wonderful Asian women that I can look at and see the design elements in the eyes, in the mouth, everything about them had to be true in the DNA of Fei. And then a step beneath that was the performance that we were going to have her do. In reading the script, you realize, oh, wow, everything that we were trying to do with Rapunzel, for me personally, this is like pushing it another notch higher. And so the rigging, the designing of all of the little muscles under the skin were so important. Like there's one shot where Fei, I think maybe my favorite shot in the movie. Fei sees this moment where she meets Mrs. Zhang for the first time. Mrs. Zhang drops these dates on the floor by accident, and Dad and her bend down to pick them up, and Fei does as well. And she notices the look, which is arresting. And then Dad's hand and Mrs. Zhang's hand touch as they're holding the bowl, and they stay together. and you cut to Fei, and in this shot, her entire world turns upside down. I mean, but you can't move anything. It's what you have to communicate. Fei's world is changed. And it's just using all of those tiny little muscles that were put under the skin and the rigging and the design, and Emma Shee, who animated it, it was like she took the Lamborghini out of the garage and just drove it full speed. And it's in the tiniest movements. I mean, animation is not about moving pictures. It's about moving people. And in that moment, it was everything that I wanted it to be. And again, we returned back to that well in the performance.
Yeah, it really shows that subtlety is, again, surprising in the performance, because you're dealing with these really difficult topics of loss in the same movie that you're dealing with these really funny characters that are, genuinely comedic. And I think it must be exciting for you to also discover new talent of people going into this movie whose name you never heard, who you would otherwise have never met, and you stumble across somebody who it just kills you with amazing animation or art direction or whatever it is. That's always like a thrill to me on these movies.
Yeah,
you must have experienced that on this.
Yeah, I just got to say, I wanted to point out Sasha Capichimpanga, who was the head of the animation team up there. Early on, I mean, he made a decision that I think really turned the corner for us in this movie. And he is so gracious and encouraging and protective of his crew, and working with Gennie and I and building the best crew with as many female, many Asian, as many people who are going to get the characters in this movie. But he said, well, I was proposing that we hire an actress to play Fei all the way through. I'm talking about live action study actors, as we did in Little Mermaid. And he said, Glen, can we just not do that? So, well, okay, but how do we keep it consistent? He said, well, I know that'll be a challenge, but if we have every animator act the shot themselves and live that performance, they're going to feel the emotions in a way that it's going to bring something new, something special, something personal to the screen that animator is going to touch the audience. And I just really think it's going to be better if we do it. I was like, man, I love this guy. Yes, let's do this. That was how we did the whole film. I mean, we could cut together a live action version of Over the Moon with every shot played by different animators. It really was phenomenal.
I would pay to see that, actually. I think most people would. I wanted to talk, you all touched on it a little bit earlier, but the art direction on the Dark Side of the Moon is so different from anything we've seen before. And I want to just touch on that. And in particular, maybe the, some of the character costumes and some of the kind of, how do you design that? How do you take your, some of your lead characters and design these wonderful diva, K-pop-ish, songs and costumes and that kind of thing. Did you go to anybody special to get those designed, or?
We knew we wanted to do something really special in terms of Chang'e's costumes, that, it had to be something that was authentically rooted in China. But at the same time, we wanted it to be modern and contemporary and fresh. And worthy of a goddess, worthy of a diva. And so I think when we looked at all of that criteria, our feeling was that it has to be Guo Pei. And Guo Pei is the designer that did all of Chang'e's costumes in the film. And she is just truly amazing. She's been China's most renowned haute couture designer for decades, but really broke out kind of globally in 2015 when she designed Rihanna's yellow gown for the Met Gala. And she has also had numerous of her pieces showcased at the Met and other museums all around the world. And she really just brought to it such a freshness, but at the same time, really kind of honoring the origin of Tonga, and that myth, and culturally, in China. And we learned when we approached her, because we thought, oh, she's not even going to talk to us, like,
Yeah. Yeah, because she's legendary.
Yeah, she's legendary. And but what we learned was actually, in her youth, she had aspirations to be an animator.
Oh, really?
And she had never done an animated film. So I was like, oh, I think we might have it in. And then, of course, well, we had the opportunity to have her meet Glen, and I thought, that's going to be our ace in the hole. Like, once that happens, she's never going to be able to say no. And so, Glen, do you want to talk about your first meeting with Golpe?
Yeah, there's an image there of her and I sitting down, and I didn't speak any Chinese, of course, and she didn't speak any English, but we both spoke drawing, and we had the most wonderful conversation. Actually, her husband was translating the first half of the meeting, and we were sitting there together, and then I think he got hungry or whatever, and anyway, he got up. And we had another hour of just talking, and Peilin, Golpe talks with her hands constantly about how she sees fabric moving, and you could never draw big enough for her, so we had to keep adding other pages to the sketchbook, and we were doing watercolors and drawing. Don, you would have loved that moment. Any artist connects with another artist in a language that doesn't need words, and it came through in this whole movie in such a powerful way. Ultra Luminary, that song was one of the serious things for me, because it couldn't be just luminary. The song itself had to be ultra luminary, and then landed on poor Celine's lap. How are you going to make this like so crazy and wild that it's deserving of that title? That was really scary. We had the costumes, but then how are you going to light it? How are you going to color it? That was probably one of the scariest things for me about this film.
And how scared were you, Celine, when you were given that assignment?
I was so excited. And it was one of the last sequences to go in lighting, I think, and in animation as well. And most of the time in animated movie, lighters love to have like 1 rig set and do all the shot with that 1 rig set. And I wanted a different lighting for every shot. So that was my best dream ever. And when we presented that to Sony, it was like, it was a bit of a nightmare. But they did it amazingly, and it went. Everything was really well prepared before we entered in lighting, because we painted like one thumbnail by shot, and I edited everything on the animatic and the animation, so they could have even animated like the change of lighting I wanted at what point of the song. So they had like they had a good material to start. And I think that's also why we ended up with like doing the most amazing sequence in the movie at the end of the production. And also everybody was really excited to work on that song, because they knew the animation was like awesome. And then the CFX, when they animated like give the simulation to the dress, and when all the Lunarians were here and kind of bouncing, it was amazing. The crew at Sony was like, yes, that's so cool. Yeah,
it is amazing. The other thing about that character, about Changi's character, is she, as an audience, you begin thinking she's villainous and she's scheming and whatever. And she ends up being one of the most empathetic, sympathetic characters in the film. That journey of storytelling for all of you is not an easy thing to do. And it's not a typical thing to do. Usually there's a villain who stays villainous throughout the whole movie. Here the villainry is subtle, and it's not necessarily a singular character. How do you approach that? I just thought that was really interesting, because it was an unexpected turn that she becomes so incredibly emotional by the time you get to her dealing with her grief?
For me, when you're a kid and you're afraid of someone, it's it can be both because it's a villain, but it also can be because it's like you're impressed by someone. When you're at school and you've got like the director of the school that asks you to go to his office, you're like, no. And for me, I've always seen like the concert and the mid-chamber, that is the following sequence, as something very impressive. And you've got this goddess that is just like showing her power, but without any villainy. And I thought that it was like really clever to show the power of Chang'e that way, to be like the only standing, I don't know, the metric, 2 meters, 30 centimeter queen, that is like so tall compared to those kids, and even the Lunarian smaller. I think for me that was enough to show that this goddess has a lot of powers.
The other thing that's interesting is, on top of all the complexity you took on, it's a musical. Can we just touch on songs for a moment, and how early that was incorporated, how early that was envisioned? And Peilin, maybe this is you to talk about, was that something from the very earliest genesis of the project that was envisioned?
It wasn't conceived or written as a musical originally, though it was always my secret hope it would become a musical.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be open-minded about it because we didn't know at the time who would direct it, and not all directors would necessarily be on board with that. But thankfully, without my even saying anything, Glen read the script and said, "This is a musical." This was the happiest words you could have said to me. But Glen, do you want to talk about kind of your reaction to that initially?
Yeah, I mean, something that I learned so much, Don, really from you, is the power of how a song can advance a story, and especially a story kind of touching to what you were talking about at the beginning, that is dealing with such really serious adult themes of death and loss. And how do you lift that? How do you tell those important themes in ways that emotionally connect to you, but you don't have to deal with it intellectually? And the songs allowed that. Feeling Feifei's longing in Rocket to the Moon, the profound wisdom of Gobi, a surprising song where he sings about being able to move forward in life. And there was always surprises that the songs gave us. And once you decide that, though, there's that big question, well, who's going to write the music for it?
Yeah.
I mean, who should our team be? So Gennie and I went back to New York, and Peilin had lined up various different groups and came down to Chris Curtis and Marjorie Duffield, who had been working together, and Helen Park, who had done K-pop as a musical, and just had, and both Gennie and I felt like we can't do it without one or the other. Let's see if they can just work together. And so we asked Peilin, who really is this incredible wealth of experience and knowledge in musicals, and she said, "You just don't do that. You don't put groups together, but let me ask and see." And fortunately, they were game, and wow, the result of this movie is because of that blend of that amazing collaboration between those two courageous groups.
They wrote almost all the songs in this movie in a period of 4 months. From December 2017 till March 2018, they wrote all the songs. We had our first screening in July. So it was really, kind of this incredible outpouring of music. Obviously working really closely with Glen and identifying all the key moments and characters that we wanted, but it just really felt meant to be. And once they were written, it felt like they were always there.
Yeah, it really did. They're integrated so beautifully into the film. Well, in wrapping up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about um, what it's like looking back on this film. And part of that may be the heroic idea of making a film during a pandemic. Part of it might be the international um, sense of working with people around the planet who are dealing with the same issues. Part of it is how do you take the art form of animation and have it fire off on all cylinders, so you're using music and art direction and color and creative choices to tell a story. And I always think the paradox of animation is you don't want the audience to see any of that sweat. You don't want the audience to know about that. Gennie, maybe we can start with you. Looking back on this experience, what's your most interesting kind of wrap up memory of all this?
Oh gosh, it was such a huge. I mean, I think we fit 30 years in three years. I think I looking back, there's so many things that we just accomplished, and we did it. I think if it's just more of a sentiment to the experience itself, is just it was never about the journey or the destination. It was about the company. I think it was a quote I heard recently, and I think everything, our success is because of the company that we had, the team. Every day we would always say we were so blessed to have the crew that we had, and Peilin and I would always say when we started, it's like, we don't want to start because we know that that's just leading us to the end, which that we wouldn't be together every day. And we still very much miss our crew. I mean, I know pandemic aside, but I think just that team was just a very, very special team, and chemistry of everybody coming together is what made the whole experience quite amazing and memorable for forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can really relate to that because they become your lifelong friends.
Yeah.
It's like you were in the war together. In every way. So, Peilin, I have so much admiration for you and what you've done at Pearl Studio, and I'm such a fan of Abominable and some of the films that you're working on there. What was this like in terms of working with that studio and Glen and the whole kind of happy accident of pulling this team together?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, for me, the way this film, I think, really stands out is like, never have I felt so part of a mission, I felt like that was something that was shared by every person that was on this film. We all felt like we were meant to be on this film, and that we had to finish this film. And I think that, between Audrey, who left this film as a love letter to her daughter and husband, and Glen Keane's feature film directorial debut, which will never happen again. This will always be the debut. It was just like, how could you not deliver on those things? Like, I think we all brought our A game every day and so desperately wanted to make this as great as it could be. And it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to work on a film that you feel that way about. And, obviously something I'll never forget.
Yeah, that's well said. And Celine, as I said at the beginning, I'm such a fan of your work, and I admire the sheer amount of creative choices that you and Glen had to make, and your team, and admire the ambition and actually the execution of all this. When you look back at the experience and the reaction to the film, which has been amazing, what is your takeaway from this?
I don't know how we did it. You mentioned earlier the amount of work in the time, and I think it's because we did some creative choice at the beginning that allow us also to we always privilege the creative decision and something that has a concept, and we knew that we can maintain this high quality through the movie. And I think that was some really smart choice, but it was also very frightening, because when you doing something that hasn't been done before, there's always someone who is asking, but what is a reference? And you're like, oh, there's no reference. We need to come up with like original design all the time. So it was a bit scary, but it was like really worth it when you finish a project and your team is like saying thank you, because I don't know, thank you, I evolved so much, or thank you, I improved and now I'm a better artist. And I think that those kind of things are always rewarding. And on a personal standpoint, I feel like that I was really lucky to have 3 artists based in Shanghai that were like constantly sharing their culture and what they were thinking with us. And I learned a ton of stuff and even started to learn Chinese. And it's because they shared so much with me that I felt like, oh, all the time I wanted to know more about that. And if there was no pandemic, I would be in China visiting the rest of the countries that I couldn't see last time. So it's like definitely something that I will do once it's possible.
Well, and well done. An incredible job. And Glen Keane, you are a treasure. What's your takeaway from this experience? You've had some amazing experiences as an animator and an actor and a character designer, but this is very different and challenging in its own way, in many ways. When you look back at this experience and this film and this movie, what's your takeaway from it all?
Well, if I compare it to directing this movie and the experience of making this movie, I think about a blank sheet of paper and you're going to do a drawing. And there's this point where everything is possible, but as soon as you make a line on that paper, you've started to define it and choices are made. And there's always this hesitation of like, I know I'm going to put a line down and it's probably going to be wrong, but I just got to go with it. And you dive in and you go with it. And I remember Gennie and I walking through the Netflix floor. We were the first ones in this new experiment of an animation studio there. It was just a concrete floor, nothing on it, nothing. And I think that was like March or something like that. And I had no idea how all of this was going to come, how much was going to be on my shoulders, how there was these feelings of fear and, like, I just don't know if I can do this. And Picasso said, I'm always doing that which I don't know how to do in order that I may learn how to do it. And what I found out is there was always somebody around you who had this wonderful idea, this inspiration, this choice, this analysis that was just what we needed, never before, always just at that moment. You were never given the solutions ahead of time. Again and again, I looked to Gennie, to Peilin, to Celine, to my team around me, John Cars, come up with the ideas that I may have had an idea, but I was always holding out for the best. You just wanted the best. And I lived through this film with a confident expectation that something wonderful was coming. And there's a point in working on this movie where I was getting to actually animate, doing hand-drawn animation of that scarf moment. And I'm in my office and I can hear out in the hallway the laughter of our team, the joy of working together. And it was the best song of the movie that no one else got to hear. We got to hear it while making it, but it was it was truly a joyful, fun experience to make this movie. Audrey, you know, there was this moment, there's a photo that we showed of her and I sitting on a couch. And it was such an important moment because it was just a few months before she passed away. And that the conversation we were having there was about Wizard of Oz, because this, in a lot of ways, is a Wizard of Oz-like kind of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so when Fei goes to the moon and experiences all of this, I mean, it's like Wizard of Oz, this dream, and Audrey looks like fiercely in my eyes and says, no, it wasn't. So Fei really goes to the moon. Yes, of course she does. So, well, okay, so does Dorothy actually go to Oz? Well, of course she went to Oz, don't you think so? And I could see this like determined make believe, make yourself believe it. And I just thought, wow. For her, this is not just an entertainment. This is like a message she's passing on to her daughter after this film is done. And we need to take it with that kind of credibility. Anyway, those are, that kind of led us all the way through the roadmap really that she gave us, and how personally we all took it.
Yeah, and you really feel that in the film. Well, it's been a delight talking to you all, and in an era when we're dealing with a very complicated planet, it's important more than ever to tell great stories and to share with our audience what it is to be human. And you've done that in an extraordinary way in this film. So I'm your biggest fan. Love what you've done here and the challenges that you've overcome. Can't wait to see what you all have in store next. Thank you for your time. Thank you to Netflix for hosting us today, and to our audience. And good luck, y'all. It's just been a pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Don.